Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday morning's thought for today. We're looking at the Gospel of Mark, and we've looked through several verses of chapter 1. And we looked yesterday at the whole idea of this business of unplugging yourself, going away from the things that you do every day to spend a little bit more time with the Lord, allowing His Word to speak to us, allowing our prayers to not just be constantly talking to God, but also listening to Him and just taking that time aside. And hopefully between yesterday and today, you've been able to have some time, some special time with the Lord where you've been able to draw aside. I'm going to read a strange verse today that we've read together as we read the first 8 verses of Mark's Gospel, and the verse which I'm sure you've been aware of even since you were a child. It's verse 6 where we've just been told about who John was, John the Baptizer, John the Baptist, who had gone away into the wilderness, and he suddenly appeared in the wilderness, and he was doing this form of baptism where people confessed their sins. They confessed that they were not the people they should have been, and it was a baptism of forgiveness, an opportunity for people to turn their lives around, an opportunity for people to say, my life is not the way it should be. I'm not living as I know I should be according to God's word, and I want to change that and turn that around. But there's this verse that follows on after they talk about John's baptism. It says, now John was clothed with camel's hair, and he wore a leather belt around his waist, and ate locusts and wild honey. All of a sudden, Mark goes from talking about this form of baptism, the baptism of forgiveness, to telling us what John's fashion sense was like, the clothes he wore and what he ate. This idea of a camel's hair against your skin. I don't know about you, but that to me, it sounds absolutely horrendous. My granny used to knit me a woolen jumper every Christmas. And then I was able to pass it on to my cousins in the following year. So they all got hand-me-downs, and I got the new one. And I always felt it was my job to break this jumper in for the family, to wear this itchy, scratchy, often green woolen jumper that my grandmother knit for me. And then, so my family could benefit from it, I would basically soften it and use it for a year, and then somebody else would get it. It's back in the days when you did pass things down to your cousins, etc. But I remember feeling, and every Christmas having this awful feeling of, oh no, I have to put on this really uncomfortable jumper. Now I know my granny knitted it for me out of the goodness of her heart, and I thanked her for it every time I received it, and I was grateful for a new jumper, especially because it wasn't a hand-me-down, but it was so uncomfortable. And that was wool, that was sheep's wool. I can't imagine what it must have felt like to put on this camel skin form of clothing, this thing over your skin, and this leather belt. Now, you can understand the leather belt, it makes good sense. If you're in the wilderness, all you've got is maybe camel skin, you maybe got the odd goat skin or whatever, and you have to wear what's around. There was no local Marks and Spencers for John to pop down the road and grab some lovely cotton shirts from. No, he had to wear whatever was going. Nor was there a food hall or a Tesco or a Sainsbury's or whatever where he could get them to come and deliver his food for him. He ate whatever was local, and he ate local honey, and I'm sure it was lovely honey. And he also ate these locusts. Now, some people have tried to say that the locusts that John the Baptist ate were actually locust beans, and they were very different from the actual insect or whatever. The Bible doesn't tell us that. The Bible tells us that he ate locusts and wild honey. That's what he ate. And I've seen some of these Asian markets where you can get fried locusts, and people eat them and they're quite happy eating them. Never tried them myself, not too keen on the idea, but this is what John the Baptist did. Now, you might say to yourself, this is all very odd. Why does Mark go from explaining about this form of baptism for forgiveness, where people were coming from all the regions around out into the wilderness, detaching themselves from all the trappings of everyday life, and the importance of forgiveness, the importance of turning around, the importance of being baptized to show that your life has changed? How does Mark suddenly go in the next verse talking about this idea of what John wore and what John ate? It seems almost trivial. What's this all about? Well, the idea behind this wasn't Mark just trying to say John was a bit of a strange character. He didn't do things the way other people did it. He was slightly odd. He wore strange clothes. He ate strange food. But, that was who John was. No, that's not what Mark's saying. what Mark's actually doing is Mark is actually comparing him and contrasting him in some ways to the prophets of the Old Testament, but comparing him especially to the prophet who was called Elijah. Now, if you ever read anything about Elijah, and Elijah's life story is amazing, a wonderful story to study. But there's this sense that Elijah also wore goat skin, and Elijah also ate things that we maybe wouldn't want to find on a menu in a restaurant. But there's this sense that in many ways, John the Baptist was very like Elijah. And Elijah was also one of these great prophets from the Old Testament. But there's this very strong feeling within the Hebrew people that before the Messiah would arrive, before the promised Messiah would come, Elijah would return. That Elijah, in a sense, would be the one who would come to announce that Jesus was coming, that the Messiah was coming. But Elijah didn't come. But instead, God sent someone else. God sent the person of John the Baptist, to come and explain about Jesus coming. Now, one of the ways that God used John was by giving him something very similar to the way Elijah conducted his business. He wore the same sort of clothes. He preached a similar sort of message. And so, in a sense, God wasn't saying, I'm going to bring Elijah back so that you will know that this is the Messiah who's coming. God said, I will bring an Elijah-like character to come and do the work of Elijah. And so that you will see John and understand who he is and believe in Jesus because of Elijah. So I want to encourage you, don't ever read the Bible and think, what's that passage doing there? What's that got to do with anything we're looking at? Why did Mark include that? That must have been a mistake, or he must have just been giving a little bit of human interest to the story. Mark was actually trying to build a bigger picture, trying to show us that this was all part of God's plan, and John fitted perfectly into God's plan. So never discount anything you read in God's Word. It's all there for a purpose, and we give God thanks for it. Hope you're having a good Thursday. God willing, see you tomorrow. God bless.